Hi everyone, Bright Advocate here. The following is a video in response to Gun L. Percher. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. His video, 10 questions every atheist must answer. I thought it was only fair to give each question a fair response with the appropriate thought, consideration, and length. So the total length of my response was a little over 20 minutes. I've therefore divided this response into 3 separate videos, each with a well-considered response. I hope that everybody takes the time to look at all 3 parts of my response. Thank you. To start with, just want to let you know there's a website right over here that I got quite a few of my answers from. I was inspired by what they had to say, and I encourage all of you to go take a look at it. It is an extremely well-designed site. With that, here we go. Number 1, you asked if there is no God, why is there anything at all? / where did the universe come from without a creator? So, you talk about God lighting the fuse of the Big Bang. I'd like to point out that these sort of before and after terms of causality, they're only possible because of the existence of time itself. You ask, has anything ever been observed to happen without a cause, and God by definition is self-existent. But then I say, why can't time or the universe also be self-existent? We know that if there is such thing as a prior to the Big Bang, it's hard to talk in terms of time, of course, since we're talking about before time. The rules of causality would have been different if they existed at all. We may never understand what's happening outside time, but our lack of understanding is not a reason to place some anthropomorphic human-like deity into the void. We would just say that the rules were different at that time. So, question 2. Where is the evidence that life could have begun without intelligent interference? I would respond that all that is necessary for abiogenesis, or rather the process of life coming from non-life, is a self-replicating molecule. Although this would not be biological evolution, it would, however, be natural selection, in the sense that as long as something is reproducing by natural processes, for instance, the way crystals do, things can go wrong in the reproduction process, leaving the finished product different than the original. These changes are what allow natural selection to take its course. Simply by possessing a trait that makes reproduction easier or more likely, natural selection is occurring. It is not difficult to see how life itself is one of the best ways to replicate. There's a lot more variety to life than in simple molecules, so therefore there's a lot more opportunity for mutation, change, that can make evolution happen. The question then is, what sort of non-biological material could have been sufficiently reproductive to begin the process of life? It's absolutely a wonderfully complex problem that biologists are looking at closely, and great work is being done in this area. The strongest hypothesis that's been put forth so far is for a sort of primitive cousin of RNA, which, as you may know, is a part of DNA. It's sort of the factory of DNA, the replication portion. DNA itself requires protein, and protein requires DNA, so it's kind of a tough paradox. But RNA does not require protein to exist, and it is self-replicating. So, this primitive sort of amino acid cousin of RNA could have been in existence, and by chance, during its self-replication, produce some of the primitive forms of what we now see in a cell. Most important portion of it would, of course, be to mutate primitive cell membrane, within which the rest of the mutations could have taken place, and we would have seen primitive RNA as the basis for the modern cell, which forms around it. So, obviously such a vast advantage in protection and the ability to encase other mutations would be a vast advantage over other cells and would be perfectly in line with evolutionary theory. We don't know the exact process yet of how the mutation would have taken place, but I would posit that it is the height of arrogance to invoke this sort of God in the gaps, saying that since we don't know the exact mutations in RNA that could produce a cell membrane, for instance, because we don't know the exact process that we must invoke an anthropomorphic human god. There's really no reason to do that. It's better to continue scientific inquiry so we can get a better grasp on how evolution works and how life was created. So, on to question 3. How can evolution explain irreducible complexity without intelligent design? You refer to wings in particular. To start with, I would like to point out that the idea of irreducible complexity is yet another example of this God in the gaps, or filling in God into what is difficult to answer scientifically. This here would suggest, well, we don't know how it could have happened, so the God of the Bible must have done it. This, I feel, is an insult both to God, just placing him in these gaps that science can't figure out, and of course to science by eliminating scientific inquiry and just stopping, just having curiosity stop there. But importantly, the people who didn't give up and say God did it, they actually have begun finding the answers. You see, for instance, wings likely evolved one of a couple possible evolutionary paths, possibly more than one. Converging mechanisms is very important in science and in evolution. So, for instance, an animal may need to run or to jump to get away from a predator. If they have any portion of their body, either between the arm and the body, or flaps, small little flaps of skin on the back that allow it during the running or jumping to have more air time and let it go farther per jump, just a slightly further jump allows for a slightly greater chance of survival in the environment. And these sort of slight changes are exactly what evolution is based on. Until, these flaps could have gotten larger and larger, becoming what we now see as wings. And then, of course, you bring in muscle control. Any animal that has more muscle control also survives slightly better, which is how you get the flapping motion of wings. There's also the possibility that, falling from trees, animals may have developed mechanisms, just slightly longer pieces of skin that allow them to fall from trees or any other such height and survive successfully. And of course, you could see that a slightly larger piece of skin allows for slightly more wind resistance and allows you to fall slightly slower and survive slightly better. Again, evolutionary principles here. And I'd also like to point out that we still see the intermediate portions of this today. We still see flying squirrels, which really should be named gliding squirrels. They don't flap. They're just able to glide and fall very slowly. I would like to say that I'm open to any of your further questions on this matter, and if you can think of any other traits that you believe are irreducibly complex, I'd love to work with you, maybe help you out thinking of the way that evolution could have designed this by a slow and steady process, because there are perfectly reasonable scientific explanations for all the animals that we see here on Earth.